Have you ever wondered why Persia, an ancient empire known today as Iran, holds such a unique place in the Bible? While the biblical narrative often focuses on Israel, Egypt, or Babylon, Persia emerges as an unexpected yet pivotal player in God's divine plan. From prophecies that mention Persian leaders by name to remarkable acts of tolerance that allowed exiled Israelites to rebuild their lives, Persia's influence in the Bible is profound and mysterious. Through this series, we'll uncover the fascinating story of Persia's role, from its origins in the genealogy of Noah, to its rise under the legendary Cyrus the Great, and even its connection to the ultimate prophecies of the end times. Why would God use a pagan empire to fulfill his promises to Israel? How did Persia's policies of religious tolerance and justice shape the spiritual lives of countless communities? And what does Persia's presence in biblical prophecies tell us about God's vision for humanity? This journey through the Bible and history promises to answer these questions, revealing how Persia's story speaks to themes of faith, inclusivity, justice, and divine purpose that still resonate today. If you're intrigued by stories of prophecy, redemption, and unexpected alliances, then join us as we explore Persia's extraordinary role in the Bible. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support our channel. And we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What surprises you most about Persia's place in biblical history? Your support helps us bring more content like this to life. Part 1. The origins and significance of Persia in biblical prophecy. Persia, or modern-day Iran, holds a unique position in the tapestry of biblical prophecy, often appearing as an unlikely yet indispensable player within the unfolding story of God's plan. To most readers of the Bible, Persia might initially seem an unexpected addition to a narrative dominated by nations like Israel, Egypt, and Babylon. However, as we delve deeper into the scriptures, it becomes clear that Persia is no peripheral actor. Rather, it is a nation with profound significance, chosen to carry out divine tasks at pivotal moments in the history of God's people. From the legacy of Noah's lineage to the foundational influence of the Medes and Persians, Persia's story is one of divine purpose interwoven into the larger biblical narrative. The story of Persia in the Bible begins almost imperceptibly within the genealogies of Genesis. Here, in what is often referred to as the Table of Nations in Genesis 10, we find the origin stories of many ancient peoples, each descended from Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Of these three, Japheth is particularly important in understanding Persia's roots. According to scripture, Japheth had a son named Madai, whose descendants would become the Medes, one of the foundational peoples of the Persian Empire. This early mention might seem minor, yet it is anything but trivial. Persia's inclusion in this early biblical genealogy serves as a clue to its future role, one that would involve not only historical power but also theological significance. From this humble beginning, the Medes, descendants of Madai, emerged as a culturally distinct people, occupying the mountainous regions of what is now Iran. Over time, the Medes joined forces with the Persians, forging a formidable empire that would eventually rise to prominence under the leadership of Cyrus the Great. This union of Medes and Persians was more than a political alliance. It was the birth of a collective identity that would play a crucial role in the biblical narrative, especially in the fulfillment of divine promises. The Medes and Persians, unified, became an embodiment of resilience and adaptability, qualities that would make Persia a fitting instrument in God's redemptive work. One of the remarkable aspects of Persia's presence in the Bible is how it is portrayed not as an adversary of Israel, but rather as a vehicle for Israel's deliverance. The scriptures offer an image of Persia as a foreign kingdom aligned, even if unknowingly, with the fulfillment of God's promises. The Persian Empire's historical trajectory demonstrates how God can utilize unexpected means to achieve his purposes. While many nations in the Bible are depicted as threats or challenges to Israel, Persia stands out as a unique exception, occupying a role that is closer to ally than adversary. This sense of divine purpose is especially evident in the role of Cyrus the Great, a central figure in Persia's biblical story. In an extraordinary instance of prophetic foresight, the prophet Isaiah mentioned Cyrus by name over a century before his birth, identifying him as the chosen instrument to liberate Israel from its Babylonian captivity. This mention of a foreign king in such specific terms is unparalleled in the Bible. Isaiah's prophecy, found in Isaiah 44 verse 28, declares, "He is my shepherd, and he shall fulfill all my purpose." The remarkable specificity of this prophecy highlights Cyrus not merely as a king, but as an agent of God's will, a shepherd tasked with guiding God's people back to their homeland. The significance of this prophecy goes beyond historical curiosity. It underscores the idea that God's sovereignty is not limited by national or ethnic boundaries. Through Cyrus, a pagan king, God demonstrates that his covenantal promises to Israel can be fulfilled through anyone or anything, even those beyond the confines of Israel's chosen lineage. Cyrus's unique role as a liberator and restorer solidifies Persia's reputation as a nation divinely appointed to play a redemptive role in the biblical story. The involvement of Cyrus and Persia in the return of the exiled Israelites is one of the defining moments in Old Testament history. When Babylon fell to the Persian Empire under Cyrus's leadership in 539 BCE, the political landscape shifted dramatically. The Israelites, who had been exiled to Babylon, found themselves under Persian rule, and soon after, Cyrus issued a decree that allowed them to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. This decree, recorded in the opening chapters of the Book of Ezra, marks a turning point in the history of Israel, signaling the end of the Babylonian captivity and the beginning of a new chapter of restoration. Cyrus's act of releasing the Israelites is not merely a political maneuver, it is a fulfillment of the prophecies spoken by Isaiah and Jeremiah, who foretold that the captivity would last for 70 years. In this way, Persia, under the guidance of a divinely inspired leader, becomes the very means by which God's promises are realized. The impact of Cyrus's decree reverberated through Israelite society, renewing their hope and reaffirming their identity as a people chosen by God. For the Israelites, who had endured the devastation of exile, Cyrus's intervention was nothing short of miraculous. They interpreted this liberation as a sign of God's enduring faithfulness, a reminder that even in foreign lands and under foreign rulers, they were never beyond the reach of divine care. Persia, through Cyrus, symbolized a fresh start, a second chance for Israel to restore its spiritual and cultural heritage. Beyond the historical and prophetic significance, Persia's role in the Bible also carries profound theological implications. By using a foreign power like Persia to accomplish his will, God illustrates a broader principle: his dominion transcends national borders, and his purposes are not bound by human expectations. Persia's story in the Bible is a testament to the idea that divine purpose can manifest in ways that defy conventional understanding. While Israel was God's chosen nation, Persia's involvement demonstrates that God's plan is inclusive, capable of embracing all peoples and nations in the unfolding of his redemptive work. As we reflect on Persia's place in the biblical narrative, we see a nation that defies categorization. Persia is neither fully Israel's ally nor its enemy. It occupies a space that is unique, a nation set apart not by covenant but by providence. Persia's inclusion in the Bible reminds us that God's plans are vast and encompassing, extending beyond what is seen or understood. This narrative offers a glimpse into the inclusivity of God's design, in which all nations have the potential to play a part in the story of salvation. Through Cyrus and the Persian Empire, the Bible reveals that divine purpose is not restricted to the familiar. God can and does work through the unexpected, bringing about redemption through means that surprise and challenge. Persia's role as a liberator, restorer, and, ultimately, a vessel for God's promises emphasizes the depth and complexity of the biblical narrative. The story of Persia in the Bible is not just one of historical consequence, but of profound spiritual significance, serving as a reminder that God's ways are often beyond human comprehension, yet always directed toward the ultimate good of his people. As we conclude this exploration of Persia's biblical origins, we stand on the threshold of understanding Persia's greater role in the unfolding story of Israel. Persia's story is far from over, and as the biblical narrative continues, we will see how this ancient empire, despite its foreignness, continues to shape the destiny of God's people in ways both unexpected and divinely ordained. Part 2: The Rise of the Persian Empire and the Divine Role of Cyrus the Great. As the story of Persia in the Bible unfolds, it reveals a nation that evolves from an obscure ancestry into one of the most powerful empires in history, shaping the spiritual and physical landscape of Israel's destiny. The Medes and Persians, united under Cyrus the Great, forged an empire that not only redefined the ancient world, but also became a central figure in the biblical narrative. While Persia's origins in the Bible connect it to the lineage of Japheth through Madai, the empire's eventual rise to power signifies a divine orchestration, placing Persia in the heart of God's redemptive plan. Cyrus's unique role as both a conqueror and a liberator marks him as one of the most extraordinary figures in biblical history, a pagan king chosen by God to fulfill prophecies spoken centuries before his birth. The book of Isaiah, written well before the rise of the Persian Empire, includes one of the most remarkable prophecies in the Old Testament. In Isaiah 44 verse 28, the prophet names Cyrus specifically, identifying him as God's shepherd who would carry out all that I pleased by decreeing the reconstruction of Jerusalem and the temple. This prophecy, made over 100 years before Cyrus's birth, signifies the depth of God's foreknowledge and his ability to orchestrate events beyond human understanding. Unlike many rulers of ancient empires, Cyrus was not merely a figure of political might but an instrument of divine purpose. His life and reign were woven into the fabric of Israel's fate, fulfilling a promise that underscored God's faithfulness to his people even during times of displacement and despair. The prophecy's specificity is unparalleled, naming a foreign king with the titles shepherd and even anointed one in Isaiah 45 verse 1, a term usually reserved for kings within Israel's own lineage. This designation is significant, as it implies a level of divine favor and purpose that transcends national or religious boundaries. Cyrus's anointing is a testament to God's sovereign control over history and a reminder that his purposes are not confined by cultural or ethnic limitations. In calling Cyrus my shepherd, God emphasizes that even those outside Israel can serve as instruments of his will. Cyrus is thus portrayed not just as a liberator of the Israelites, but as a figure embodying divine guidance, fulfilling a role ordained long before his ascension to power. When Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon in 539 BCE, he inaugurated a new era for the exiled Israelites. Babylon, under Nebuchadnezzar, had been a symbol of oppression and exile, having destroyed Jerusalem and its temple while enslaving the people of Judah. For 70 years, the Israelites lived in Babylonian captivity, separated from their homeland and religious practices. Yet, according to the prophet Jeremiah, this exile was not permanent. God had promised that it would last precisely 70 years, a period that culminated with Cyrus's rise to power. In conquering Babylon, Cyrus became the means by which God's promise of liberation was fulfilled. His decree, recorded in the opening verses of the book of Ezra, allowed the Israelites to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple, marking the end of the Babylonian exile and the beginning of Israel's spiritual and cultural restoration. Cyrus's decree is a significant turning point in the Old Testament, symbolizing more than just a change in political rule. It represents a profound act of redemption and restoration. The Israelites, who had endured decades of captivity, interpreted this decree as a divine intervention, a testament to God's unwavering commitment to his covenant with his people. For them, the return to Jerusalem was more than a journey home. It was a renewal of their identity and their relationship with God. The temple, once destroyed by Babylon, was central to Israel's faith, serving as the physical embodiment of God's presence among his people. Cyrus's role in facilitating its reconstruction underscores the depth of his connection to God's purposes, making him a pivotal figure in the narrative of Israel's restoration. The book of Ezra opens with the proclamation from Cyrus, the Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has appointed me to build a temple for him at Jerusalem in Judah." This declaration is remarkable not only for its content, but also for its context. Here is a pagan king acknowledging the God of Israel and acting on his behalf. Cyrus's willingness to facilitate the rebuilding of the temple, despite his own beliefs and cultural background, exemplifies a profound respect for divine instruction. His proclamation to the Israelites was not merely a political move, but a fulfillment of a prophetic vision, a demonstration of God's power to work through any ruler, regardless of nationality or faith. The impact of Cyrus's decree extended far beyond the physical act of rebuilding the temple. It rekindled the Israelites' hope and reaffirmed their belief in God's providence. For a people who had experienced the trauma of exile, Cyrus's intervention served as a reminder that God's promises endure, even in the face of displacement and despair. The restoration of the temple was more than a construction project. It was a symbol of Israel's resilience and a testimony to God's faithfulness. Through Cyrus, God provided Israel with a second chance to rebuild its spiritual and cultural foundation, offering a renewed sense of purpose and identity. The Israelites' return to Jerusalem, therefore, was not merely a return to their homeland, but a spiritual journey toward reconnection with God. Theologically, Cyrus's role as a foreign king chosen by God to restore Israel challenges traditional notions of divine favoritism. In utilizing a pagan ruler to fulfill his covenantal promises, God demonstrates that his authority transcends human boundaries and expectations. This inclusivity is a central theme in the Bible, illustrating that God's redemptive plan extends beyond Israel to encompass all nations and peoples. Cyrus's actions remind us that God's purposes are not confined to a single group, but are woven into the fabric of history in ways that embrace all humanity. This theme is reinforced throughout the scriptures, highlighting the idea that God's sovereignty is universal, capable of influencing and directing even those outside the traditional bounds of Israel. Cyrus's role also serves as a precursor to other instances in the Bible where God uses unexpected means to accomplish his will. By positioning Cyrus as a liberator and restorer, the Bible offers a foreshadowing of God's ability to work through the unexpected, to bring about redemption in ways that defy conventional understanding. Cyrus's actions are a testament to the idea that God's plan is both inclusive and surprising, involving people and nations beyond what Israel might have anticipated. In this sense, Cyrus becomes a symbol of God's willingness to operate outside traditional frameworks, using unlikely figures to bring about profound change. In allowing the Israelites to return to Jerusalem, Cyrus not only fulfills a divine promise, but also sets a precedent for religious freedom that would shape the ancient world. His policy of tolerance toward various faiths and cultures contrasts sharply with the rigid control exercised by other empires, such as Babylon. Through Cyrus, Persia exemplifies a model of leadership that respects and preserves cultural diversity, allowing nations to maintain their unique religious identities within the empire. This approach resonates with the biblical theme of unity within diversity, reflecting the idea that all nations are part of God's creation and have a place in his redemptive plan. The legacy of Cyrus the Great in the Bible is one of profound significance, embodying a combination of power, respect, and divine purpose. His influence extends beyond the Israelites, affecting the ancient world's broader religious and cultural landscape. By facilitating the rebuilding of the temple, Cyrus not only fulfills his role in Israel's history, but also establishes Persia as a nation through which God's promises are realized. In the biblical narrative, Persia stands as a testament to the power of faith and the enduring impact of divine purpose, reminding us that God's plans are vast and all-encompassing, transcending human limitations and expectations. As we move forward in this exploration of Persia's role in the Bible, we see how the nation's relationship with Israel continues to evolve, deepening the spiritual connection between the two. Cyrus's reign marked the beginning of a new era for the Israelites, but Persia's influence in their story is far from complete. The narrative continues to unfold, with Persia remaining a central figure in the fulfillment of God's promises and the preservation of His people. Part 3: Persia's role in protecting Israel through the story of Esther. As Persia's story continues in the Bible, we move into one of the most dramatic and poignant accounts of divine intervention, the story of Esther. Under the reign of King Xerxes I, also known as Ahasuerus in the biblical text, the Persian Empire became the stage for a profound tale of courage, faith, and providence. The Book of Esther, one of the most celebrated narratives in Jewish history, tells of a young Jewish woman who rises to the role of queen in a foreign land. It is through Esther's bravery and unwavering faith that the Jewish people are saved from a genocidal plot, orchestrated by a high-ranking Persian official named Haman. This narrative showcases Persia's unique position within God's plan, where a seemingly secular kingdom becomes a sanctuary for divine protection. The backdrop of Esther's story is set in Susa, one of the principal cities of the Persian Empire. King Xerxes, known for his immense wealth and power, ruled over a vast and diverse empire that stretched from India to Ethiopia. In a kingdom of this magnitude, cultural and religious diversity was common, and the Jewish people, though a minority, were scattered throughout the empire. The Book of Esther introduces us to Mordecai, a Jewish man who resides in Susa and serves as a father figure to his young cousin, Esther. Following the dismissal of Queen Vashti, Esther is brought to the royal court and, through a series of events, chosen as the new queen. Unbeknownst to the king, Esther is of Jewish descent, a fact that becomes central to the unfolding drama. The story takes a dark turn with the introduction of Haman, a powerful official who holds deep resentment toward the Jewish people, particularly Mordecai. Haman's animosity towards Mordecai, who refuses to bow before him, fuels a desire for revenge. He devises a plan not only to punish Mordecai but to annihilate the entire Jewish population within the Persian Empire. With cunning and deceit, Haman manipulates King Xerxes into issuing an edict that authorizes the mass extermination of the Jews. This decree, backed by the authority of the Persian throne, sets a date for the annihilation of the Jewish people, leaving them in a state of despair and vulnerability. At this pivotal moment, Esther emerges as an unlikely yet divinely appointed heroine. Mordecai, upon learning of Haman's plot, urges Esther to intervene on behalf of her people, reminding her of the possibility that she has come to her royal position for such a time as this. Esther 4 verse 14. Mordecai's words echo the biblical theme of divine purpose, suggesting that Esther's ascent to queenship was no coincidence but rather a strategic placement by God. Initially hesitant, Esther realizes the weight of her responsibility and the potential consequences of approaching the king unbidden, a move that could result in her own death. Yet, driven by faith and a sense of duty, she chooses to risk her life, embodying the virtues of courage and self-sacrifice. In a dramatic display of bravery, Esther requests that the Jewish people in Susa fast for 3 days as she prepares to approach the king. The act of fasting, traditionally a gesture of humility and reliance on God, underscores the spiritual dimension of Esther's mission. Her decision to confront Xerxes without an official summons is an act of defiance against royal protocol, demonstrating her willingness to put the survival of her people above her personal safety. When she finally approaches Xerxes, her courage and poise win his favor, and he grants her an audience. In a carefully orchestrated series of feasts, Esther reveals Haman's plot to the king, exposing the official's deceitful intentions and his deep-seated hatred for the Jewish people. Xerxes, upon learning of Haman's treachery and the threat to his own queen's people, responds with decisive action. In a dramatic reversal, Haman is executed on the very gallows he had constructed for Mordecai, and the king issues a new edict that allows the Jewish people to defend themselves against their enemies. This turn of events highlights the themes of justice and divine retribution, as the plot intended to destroy the Jews is dismantled, and Haman faces the consequences of his actions. The Jewish people, empowered by the king's decree, successfully defend themselves, and the planned annihilation is averted. This victory is not merely a survival story, but a celebration of divine intervention, as God's unseen hand guides Esther and Mordecai in their quest to protect their people. The story of Esther is filled with layers of theological and symbolic meaning. On one level, it is a testament to the resilience of the Jewish people and their ability to maintain faith in the face of adversity. The absence of direct mentions of God in the Book of Esther has often been noted by scholars, yet his presence is undeniably felt through the narrative's events. Esther's ascent to queenship, her courage in confronting the king, and the reversal of Haman's plot are portrayed as manifestations of divine providence, subtly woven into the fabric of the story. God's influence is present not through visible miracles, but through the orchestration of events, reminding readers that divine intervention can occur in both overt and subtle ways. Theologically, the story of Esther challenges readers to consider the nature of faith and action. Esther's courage is a model of proactive faith, one that does not wait passively, but acts in alignment with divine purpose. Her actions embody the biblical principle that faith is often coupled with responsibility and that God's plans may require human cooperation. Esther's willingness to risk her life for the survival of her people exemplifies the concept of sacrificial love, a theme that resonates throughout the Bible and serves as a reminder of the moral and ethical dimensions of faith. Moreover, the Book of Esther underscores the idea that God's covenantal protection extends beyond the borders of Israel. Although the Jewish people are living in exile, scattered throughout a foreign land, they are not beyond God's care or His ability to intervene on their behalf. The Persian Empire, under Xerxes, becomes the unlikely stage for this divine protection, demonstrating that God's promises are not limited by geography or political boundaries. Persia, through Xerxes and Esther, becomes a refuge for the Jewish people, a place where they experience not only survival but also victory and celebration. The Jewish festival of Purim, established to commemorate this victory, serves as a lasting reminder of the events in Esther's story. Purim, celebrated annually, is a joyful and festive occasion that honors the courage of Esther and the faithfulness of God. The traditions associated with Purim, reading the Book of Esther, sharing food and gifts, and rejoicing, are not just acts of remembrance but affirmations of the enduring relevance of this story. For the Jewish people, Purim symbolizes hope and resilience, a celebration of God's providence in their history and a reminder of His commitment to their survival. Esther's story also sheds light on the role of women in the biblical narrative, presenting her as a figure of strength and influence in a predominantly patriarchal society. Her position as queen and her decisive actions challenge traditional gender roles, illustrating that God's purposes can be fulfilled through anyone, regardless of social status or gender. Esther's example inspires readers to recognize the potential for leadership and courage in all individuals, emphasizing that divine calling is not confined to conventional roles or expectations. Through Esther, the narrative of Persia in the Bible reaches new depths, revealing a kingdom that serves as a vessel for God's justice and protection. While other empires in the biblical text often symbolize oppression or hostility toward Israel, Persia stands apart as a realm where God's people find refuge. This distinct role aligns with the broader theme of Persia as a nation that, despite its foreignness, aligns with God's covenantal promises. In facilitating Esther's rise to queenship and the subsequent deliverance of the Jewish people, Persia emerges not as an antagonist, but as a partner in God's redemptive plan. As we delve deeper into Persia's story in the Bible, the narrative of Esther serves as a reminder that God's providence can manifest in unexpected ways and through unexpected people. Persia's role in this account exemplifies how divine purpose can operate through the fabric of human history, orchestrating events that transcend cultural and national boundaries. Esther's courage, combined with Persia's unique position, contributes to a legacy of faith and protection that will continue to unfold in the coming chapters of Israel's story. Part 4: Persia in the Prophecies of Daniel and Ezekiel. As we follow Persia's journey through the biblical narrative, we arrive at a pivotal point where the nation emerges not only as a historical ally, but as a symbol within Prophecies concerning the fate of Israel and the broader world. The books of Daniel and Ezekiel contain some of the Bible's most profound and mysterious visions, revealing the rise and fall of empires and the unfolding of divine plans. In these prophecies, Persia occupies a significant position, symbolizing more than a mere political entity. It becomes a manifestation of God's sovereignty over the shifting powers of the ancient world. Through these prophetic lenses, we begin to see how Persia's influence extends beyond its historical role, entering the realm of theological symbolism that speaks to God's dominion over time, nations, and destiny itself. The Book of Daniel provides a compelling account of prophetic visions involving Persia. Daniel, a Jewish prophet who lived during the Babylonian exile, served in the courts of both Babylonian and Persian rulers. His life bridges the transition between these two empires, and his visions reflect this historical shift. In Daniel's interpretation of King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, recorded in Daniel 2, we encounter a colossal statue composed of different materials, each representing successive world empires. The statue's silver chest and arms are traditionally understood to symbolize the Medo-Persian Empire, which would rise after the fall of Babylon. This imagery of silver conveys not only the wealth and power of Persia, but also its role as a stabilizing force in the ancient world, a force that would ultimately be replaced by Greece, symbolized by the statue's bronze belly and thighs. This vision of the statue in Daniel 2 sets the stage for understanding Persia's place in God's timeline. The progression of empires depicted in the statue reflects a divine order, where each kingdom rises and falls according to God's will. Persia, as the second kingdom in this sequence, embodies a transitional phase in which God's people find a temporary sanctuary and a period of relative peace. Unlike Babylon, which is portrayed as an oppressive force, Persia offers a measure of tolerance and even support for the Jewish people, allowing them to rebuild their temple and restore their worship. In this way, Persia's role in Daniel's vision is not merely that of a conquering empire, but of a divinely appointed protector, a symbol of God's provision for Israel during a time of vulnerability. Further into the book, Daniel receives another vision, this time involving 4 beasts rising from the sea, each representing different empires that would dominate the ancient world. The second beast, described as a bear raised up on one side, is generally interpreted as symbolizing the Medo-Persian Empire, with its uneven stance representing the alliance between the Medes and Persians, where Persia ultimately rose to greater prominence. The bear's ferocity and power convey Persia's might, but it also hints at the empire's dual nature, a partnership that, while formidable, is not invincible. Persia's depiction as a bear contrasts with Babylon's image as a lion, suggesting that while Persia may lack the grandeur of its predecessor, it possesses a resilient strength that would sustain it as a dominant power for centuries. Daniel's visions continue to explore the interaction between Persia and the other great powers of the ancient world. In Daniel 8, the prophet describes a ram with 2 horns, one taller than the other, representing the Medo-Persian Empire. The ram charges in multiple directions, symbolizing Persia's conquests across various regions. However, the vision also introduces a goat with a prominent horn, representing Greece and its king, Alexander the Great, who would ultimately conquer Persia. The imagery of the ram and the goat is rich with symbolism, capturing the ebb and flow of empires as they rise and fall within God's ordained plan. Persia's eventual defeat at the hands of Greece serves as a reminder that no empire, regardless of its power, is beyond God's control. Even the mightiest kingdoms are subject to the divine timeline, each playing its part in a larger, unfolding story. While Daniel's visions focus on the succession of empires, the Book of Ezekiel presents Persia within a more eschatological framework, positioning it within a prophecy of the end times. In Ezekiel 38-39, we encounter the prophecy of Gog and Magog, a future coalition of nations that will rise against Israel in a climactic battle. Among these nations is Persia, aligned with other entities like Meshech, Tubal, and Gomer. This prophecy, often interpreted as a depiction of the final confrontation between the forces of good and evil, places Persia within a symbolic alliance that challenges Israel in a time of ultimate trial. The inclusion of Persia in this prophetic vision speaks to the nation's continued relevance in God's plan, extending beyond its historical role to embody a broader, theological significance. In Ezekiel's prophecy, Persia is not simply an ancient kingdom, it represents a powerful actor in the cosmic struggle between divine and opposing forces. This vision of a future conflict underscores the Bible's portrayal of Persia as a nation that, while often aligned with God's purposes, can also serve as a reminder of the ongoing tension between earthly powers and God's sovereignty. The prophecy of Gog and Magog, with Persia as a participant, invites readers to reflect on the complexities of divine providence and the ways in which nations and empires are woven into the fabric of God's redemptive history. These prophetic depictions of Persia reveal a recurring theme in the Bible, the transitory nature of human power. Through the visions of Daniel and Ezekiel, Persia is presented as both a mighty empire and a symbol of ephemerality, destined to yield to the next kingdom in God's sequence of empires. Persia's prominence in these prophecies underscores the concept that all earthly powers, no matter how dominant, are temporary within the framework of divine history. Each empire, including Persia, plays a role in the unfolding story, but none are immune to the passage of time or the supremacy of God's will. In this sense, Persia serves as both a historical reality and a theological symbol, reminding readers of the impermanence of human authority in the face of divine sovereignty. Theologically, Persia's place in these prophecies reinforces the idea of God's ultimate control over history. The succession of empires, from Babylon to Persia to Greece and beyond, reflects a divine plan in which each kingdom is granted power for a season only to be succeeded by another. Persia's role in this sequence is significant, as it demonstrates how God can use even foreign empires to fulfill his purposes. The imagery of Persia as a ram, a bear, and a participant in the eschatological conflict of Gog and Magog conveys the multifaceted nature of the empire's influence, both as a stabilizing force and as a player in the final cosmic battle. This duality in Persia's portrayal illustrates the complexity of divine providence, where a single nation can embody both protection and opposition within the larger narrative of salvation. As we consider Persia's presence in these prophecies, we are reminded that the Bible often uses nations as symbols, each representing aspects of humanity's relationship with God. Persia, through its appearances in Daniel and Ezekiel, symbolizes resilience, strength, and divine appointment, yet it also serves as a reminder of the limitations of human power. While Persia may rise to great heights, it is ultimately part of a cycle that submits to the higher authority of God's will. This portrayal invites readers to see Persia not merely as a historical empire, but as an archetype of human ambition tempered by divine purpose. In this way, Persia's story resonates with the broader biblical theme of humility before God, acknowledging that all kingdoms, no matter how grand, are subject to his dominion. As the narrative of Persia unfolds further in the Bible, its legacy as both a historical and prophetic entity becomes increasingly complex. Through the visions of Daniel and Ezekiel, we see a nation that embodies the paradox of power and submission, a kingdom that, while significant, remains transient in the grand design of God's timeline. Persia's role in these prophecies serves as a reminder of the vastness of God's plan, a plan that encompasses all nations and transcends human understanding. In the biblical story, Persia stands as a testament to the power of prophecy and the enduring truth that God's purposes are unshakable, guiding the course of history toward a divine conclusion. Part 5: The cultural and religious influence of Persia through the ages. As Persia's story continues to unfold in the biblical narrative, we encounter a nation that influences not only the political but also the cultural and religious landscape of the ancient world. Beyond its roles in prophecy and Israel's history, Persia emerges as a symbol of tolerance and cultural richness, offering a unique contrast to the more domineering empires that often appear in the scriptures. Persia's approach to governance, particularly under leaders like Cyrus the Great, exemplifies a philosophy of religious tolerance and cultural respect that profoundly impacted the Jewish people and set a precedent for the ancient world. The legacy of Persia's influence resonates through traditions, religious practices, and even the early spread of monotheistic ideas that echo into modern times. One of the most remarkable aspects of Persia's influence in the Bible is its approach to religious tolerance. Unlike the Babylonian Empire, which sought to dominate and assimilate conquered peoples, Persia under Cyrus allowed its subjects to maintain their own customs, religions, and ways of life. This policy of tolerance was revolutionary for its time and marked a shift from the aggressive imperialism of preceding empires. For the Jewish people, who had endured the trauma of exile and the destruction of their temple under Babylonian rule, Persia's approach offered a respite and a renewal of faith. Cyrus's decree, which allowed the Jewish people to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple, was not only a political act but also a profound gesture of religious freedom. This respect for cultural and religious diversity became a hallmark of the Persian Empire, making it a rare sanctuary for people of varied backgrounds and beliefs. Persia's support of religious freedom had a transformative effect on Jewish religious life and practice. For the Israelites returning from exile, the opportunity to rebuild the temple was a moment of profound spiritual significance. The temple was more than just a place of worship, it was the physical center of their faith, the location where they believed God's presence dwelled among them. Under Persian rule, the Jewish people were able to re-establish their religious traditions, reinvigorate their community, and rekindle their covenant with God. The restoration of the temple marked a renewal of national and spiritual identity, a second chance to live out their faith in their ancestral homeland. The impact of Persian tolerance extended beyond the immediate act of allowing the Jews to return to Jerusalem. Under Persian rule, Jewish communities throughout the empire enjoyed a period of relative stability and autonomy, which allowed their religious practices and cultural heritage to flourish. The respect and freedom that Persia granted to the Jewish people fostered an environment where Jewish thought and theology could develop in new ways. This period saw the compilation and codification of many Jewish scriptures, as well as the development of traditions that would later become central to both Judaism and Christianity. Persia's influence thus provided fertile ground for the growth of ideas and practices that would shape the religious landscape for generations to come. Another dimension of Persia's cultural influence is evident in its interaction with other religions and philosophies of the time. Persia was home to a diverse array of beliefs, the most prominent of which was Zoroastrianism, an ancient monotheistic faith founded by the prophet Zoroaster. Zoroastrianism emphasized concepts such as the struggle between good and evil, the importance of ethical behavior, and the existence of an afterlife. These ideas bore similarities to certain themes in Jewish theology and may have influenced Jewish thought during the period of Persian rule. While the extent of this influence remains a topic of scholarly debate, the similarities between Zoroastrian and Jewish teaching suggest a cultural exchange that enriched the religious traditions of both peoples. The story of the Magi in the New Testament is another example of Persia's enduring influence on the biblical narrative. The Magi, often referred to as wise men in the Gospel of Matthew, are believed by many scholars to have been Persian astrologers or priests, likely associated with the Zoroastrian tradition. Guided by a star, they journeyed to Bethlehem to honor the birth of Jesus, bringing gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. This event highlights the connection between Persia and early Christian history, suggesting that Persia's wisdom traditions recognized and honored the significance of Jesus' birth. The Magi's journey symbolizes the respect for spiritual truth that transcends cultural and religious boundaries, illustrating how Persia's legacy of wisdom continued to intersect with key moments in the unfolding biblical story. The visit of the Magi also reflects Persia's reputation as a center of learning and knowledge. Persia was renowned for its scholarly pursuits, particularly in astronomy, philosophy, and medicine. The Magi, as practitioners of astrology and interpreters of omens, represent the intellectual curiosity and spiritual insight that characterized Persian culture. Their journey to Bethlehem underscores Persia's role as a bridge between cultures, connecting the wisdom of the East with the spiritual awakening taking place in the West. This meeting of minds and beliefs exemplifies the way in which Persia's influence extended beyond its political reach, shaping the intellectual and spiritual currents of the ancient world. Persia's legacy of cultural and religious tolerance left a lasting impact on the ancient Near East, creating a model of governance that would influence later empires, including the Roman Empire. By allowing its subjects to retain their cultural and religious identities, Persia fostered an environment of mutual respect and coexistence that stood in stark contrast to the more authoritarian approaches of other empires. This environment not only allowed Jewish communities to thrive, but also laid the groundwork for the eventual spread of Judaism and, later, Christianity throughout the Roman world. The principle of religious freedom, as practiced by Persia, became a cornerstone of a society that valued diversity and recognized the importance of respecting the beliefs of others. The establishment of Jewish communities throughout the Persian Empire created a diaspora that would have profound implications for the future of Judaism and the development of Christianity. These communities served as centers of Jewish learning and worship, preserving traditions and fostering connections with other cultures. As these Jewish communities continued to grow, they helped to spread monotheistic beliefs and values across the ancient world, setting the stage for the rise of Christianity. Persia's policy of tolerance enabled this exchange of ideas, allowing Jewish and later Christian teachings to reach audiences far beyond the borders of Israel. Furthermore, Persia's emphasis on ethical governance and moral integrity found echoes in the teachings of both Judaism and Christianity. The Persian concept of divine justice and the moral responsibilities of rulers may have influenced Jewish thought, particularly in the prophetic writings that emphasize justice, mercy, and humility. These values resonate with the ethical teachings of Jesus and the early Christian Church, which championed compassion, forgiveness, and love for one's neighbor. In this way, Persia's cultural and religious philosophy contributed to the ethical framework that would underpin both Jewish and Christian teachings. The legacy of Persia in the Bible is not limited to specific events or individuals. It is a testament to the lasting impact of cultural and religious ideals that transcended boundaries. Persia's model of tolerance, its respect for diversity, and its commitment to ethical governance left an indelible mark on the ancient world, influencing not only Israel but the broader context of human civilization. The empire's openness to different beliefs and practices fostered an environment where spiritual growth and cultural exchange could flourish, laying the foundation for future developments in religious thought and practice. In the biblical story, Persia stands as a symbol of a world where diversity is embraced and respected, a world where different peoples and faiths can coexist under a banner of shared humanity. Persia's inclusion in the Bible is a reminder that God's purposes are not confined to a single nation or culture. The empire's influence reaches across boundaries, bridging gaps between East and West, between faiths and philosophies, and between ancient and modern worlds. Through Persia, we see a glimpse of a world where unity and diversity are not opposites, but complementary facets of a divine plan. As we reflect on Persia's cultural and religious impact, we recognize that its legacy continues to resonate in the principles of religious freedom, ethical leadership, and mutual respect that shape our societies today. Persia's role in the biblical narrative transcends time, offering lessons that remain relevant to contemporary conversations about tolerance, coexistence, and the power of cultural exchange. In the ongoing story of humanity, Persia's influence serves as a reminder of the strength found in diversity and the enduring value of respecting the beliefs and traditions of others. Part 6: The historical and theological lessons of Persia's role in the Bible. As we reach the conclusion of Persia's journey in the Bible, it becomes evident that this ancient empire's role extends far beyond historical events and prophetic visions. Persia is portrayed not just as a powerful empire or a prophetic symbol, but as a profound theological example, illustrating key lessons about faith, tolerance, and divine sovereignty. Through Persia, the Bible communicates enduring principles that transcend the ancient world, providing insights that remain relevant for contemporary audiences. This final exploration of Persia's story in the Bible reveals lessons about God's inclusive purposes, the transformative power of tolerance, and the idea that divine plans often unfold in unexpected ways. Throughout the Bible, Persia stands as a testament to the belief that God's sovereignty is not limited by human expectations or national boundaries. This principle is vividly demonstrated in the life of Cyrus the Great, a Persian king who, despite being a pagan ruler, was chosen by God to fulfill a significant role in Israel's redemption. Cyrus's decree, which allowed the Jewish people to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple, exemplifies the idea that God can use any person or nation to carry out his purposes. By choosing Cyrus as a liberator, the Bible presents a radical notion that God's will is not confined to a single people or culture. Instead, his plans encompass all of humanity, reaching across boundaries to unite diverse nations in the pursuit of a greater good. This message of inclusivity is further underscored by Persia's policy of religious tolerance. Unlike the empires that sought to impose their beliefs on conquered peoples, Persia allowed its subjects to retain their cultural and religious identities. This approach provided the Jewish people with an opportunity to restore their faith and practices without fear of persecution. Persia's respect for diversity serves as a powerful reminder that religious freedom is not merely a modern concept, it is a principle rooted in ancient history, a value that enabled the flourishing of various beliefs and practices within the Persian Empire. This legacy of tolerance challenges us to reflect on the importance of mutual respect and coexistence in our own time, recognizing that true strength lies not in uniformity but in the celebration of diversity. Persia's model of tolerance and acceptance also offers a theological lesson about the nature of God's kingdom. In the Bible, God's kingdom is often described as a place where people of all nations come together, united by their shared faith and common humanity. Persia's openness to different cultures and religions foreshadows this vision, symbolizing a world in which diversity is embraced and respected. Through Persia, the Bible reveals a glimpse of a kingdom that transcends cultural divisions, a kingdom where every individual is valued and every tradition honored. This vision invites readers to imagine a world shaped by compassion, understanding, and inclusivity, a world that reflects the values of God's kingdom on earth. In addition to illustrating principles of inclusivity and tolerance, Persia's role in the Bible also demonstrates the concept of divine justice and moral integrity. The story of Esther, set within the Persian Empire, is a prime example of how God's justice can prevail even in the face of great opposition. Esther's bravery and Mordecai's wisdom ultimately lead to the downfall of Haman, whose plot to destroy the Jewish people is thwarted by his own actions. This reversal of fortune serves as a reminder that those who seek harm for others often face the consequences of their own misdeeds. Through this story, Persia becomes a setting for divine justice, a place where God's righteousness is upheld and his people are protected. The Book of Esther thus reinforces the biblical theme that God is an active participant in the lives of his people, working behind the scenes to bring about justice and deliverance. Theologically, the story of Esther also highlights the idea of faith in action. Esther's courage to confront King Xerxes on behalf of her people is a powerful example of how faith often requires boldness and sacrifice. Her willingness to risk her life for the survival of her people reflects a faith that is not passive but proactive, a faith that trusts in God's guidance while also taking responsibility. Esther's actions demonstrate that faith and courage are intertwined, each strengthening the other. This message resonates with readers across time, reminding us that faith is not just a belief in divine power, but a commitment to living out that belief in ways that reflect love, justice, and compassion. As Persia's story unfolds in the Bible, it also teaches us about the transitory nature of human power. The visions of Daniel and Ezekiel present Persia as one of the great empires in a succession of kingdoms, each rising and falling according to God's timeline. This succession of empires underscores the biblical truth that earthly power is temporary, subject to the will of a higher authority. Persia's eventual decline at the hands of Greece serves as a reminder that no empire, no matter how grand, is eternal. Through Persia, the Bible communicates the message that all human achievements, however impressive, are fleeting in the face of divine purpose. This perspective encourages humility, reminding us that true greatness is found not in power or wealth, but in aligning our lives with values that endure beyond the material world. The inclusion of Persia in the Bible's eschatological visions also speaks to the theme of ultimate redemption. In Ezekiel's prophecy of Gog and Magog, Persia is depicted as part of a coalition that challenges Israel in a future conflict. This vision of Persia's role in the end times suggests that the nation's influence extends into the final chapters of human history. However, the prophecy's emphasis on Israel's survival and God's ultimate victory reaffirms the idea that, despite the trials and conflicts that may arise, God's promises remain steadfast. Persia's presence in these eschatological visions reinforces the hope that, no matter how turbulent the world may become, God's purpose will prevail. This message of hope and redemption encourages readers to trust in God's faithfulness, even when facing uncertainty or adversity. Through Persia, the Bible provides a multidimensional portrayal of a nation that embodies resilience, tolerance, justice, and divine purpose. Persia's story is a testament to the idea that God's kingdom is not limited by human boundaries or cultural distinctions. Instead, it is a kingdom that includes people of all backgrounds, united by a shared commitment to values that reflect God's character. Persia's legacy in the Bible challenges us to reimagine our understanding of faith, reminding us that God's plans often transcend our expectations, bringing together diverse peoples and traditions in ways that reveal the depth of His love and wisdom. In our modern world, the story of Persia in the Bible remains relevant, offering insights that inspire us to embrace values of inclusivity, justice, and compassion. Persia's role in the biblical narrative invites us to consider how we, too, can contribute to a world that honors diversity and upholds the dignity of every individual. The lessons of Persia encourage us to recognize the beauty of cultural and religious diversity, to seek justice with humility, and to live with faith that God's purposes are greater than our own understanding. As we reflect on Persia's journey, we are reminded that, in the vast tapestry of God's plan, every nation, culture, and individual has a role to play in the story of redemption. Persia's story in the Bible concludes not with a final word, but with an invitation, a call to continue exploring, learning, and embodying the values that this ancient empire represents. Through its historical deeds, its leaders like Cyrus and Esther, and its inclusion in prophetic visions, Persia has left an indelible mark on the biblical narrative. Its influence reaches beyond the pages of Scripture, reminding us that the principles of faith, tolerance, and justice are timeless, enduring across generations and cultures. In the story of Persia, we find a testament to the truth that God's purposes are vast and inclusive, encompassing all of humanity in a journey toward a world of peace, unity, and love.